Hey guys, loving the questions coming in. Keep firing away and I'll keep answering them. The question I'm going to focus on today is from Polynithis. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Focusing on study habits. It's like a 4-part question this, so I'm going to dive in deep and go over all the topics. So the first part is how to balance playing and studying long term. Now, to be successful in poker, you need to develop good playing habits and good study habits. Now, there's no magic ratio of one to the other. I believe that you should always play more than you study, but that's just my personal preference. Coming up, when you're starting out, there's a lot you need to learn. You need to be putting in designated study time. So I would say maximize your playing hours. If your results are going well at the level you're playing, still put hours aside for studying, but lesser. If your results aren't going as good, put more study time in. So personally, I always studied way harder when I was on downswings, break-even spells, or moving up buy-ins. Then I was obsessed with studying and it would take up a lot of my time, but I was still making sure I'm implementing it. So theoretically, there's a lot of stuff to know, but it means nothing if you can't implement it in game. So never go for long spells of studying and not playing. Always be trying to study, learn, implement that in game. So I would say get some good disciplined playing hours and also designate at least a percentage of your time towards studying, whether it's 10%, 20, 30, 40. I don't think there's a correct number for that. It's individual, depends on what you need to learn and what kind of student you are. I learned a lot from experience and playing because I was quite analytical in games and I was always trying to think, what does that mean? So I was learning via playing a bit more. Other people need to put pen to paper and look for solutions to learn that way. So that's the sort of balance of how to balance studying and playing. Okay, so the second part is, where is it? How to judge your skill to estimate whether you need to move up stakes or down stakes. So the holy grail of checking your results is EV. Only check EV, forget your actual. It depends on the game you're referring to. Heads up games, it's quite obvious when you're a good winner. I'd say 3% on the fish would be the minimum before you move up buy-ins. But basically, if you're a profitable player, find out what the good players at your level are doing. Find out what is a good win rate. If you're in that category and you're rolled, move up like straight away as soon as possible, as long as you're ready for what's coming next. So when you move up stakes, generally you've got to prove yourself. There's more swings variance, so when you move up, you do have to be aware of the variance that's going to come and the sort of new psychological issues. In terms of moving down, if your results are bad for a while, a period of time, you've got two options. You either study harder, try harder, put more work in, or you can accept you're not good enough for the level currently, your roll's not good enough, and you have to move down for a period of time. So this would be if you're losing an AV and you can't take the financial roll, financial sort of hits a bit. Personally, I'd be reluctant to move down if you're winning an EV, but just running bad. But if you're negative in EV for that buy-in, you need to address the fundamental issues that are going on, and you're probably best off moving down stakes while you figure out what's going on with your game. But yeah, use like decent samples. It depends on the game, what sort of sample you're using. If you're talking about MTTs, I'm not sure on the sample. If you're talking about heads up singles, you could be looking at like 1K samples, see what your EV's looking like. For spins, it could be something like a 500 to 1K sample. If you're negative EV, maybe you need to start working on your game more, or you need to start questioning the level you're playing. The next part is, do you think Pio Solver examples and solutions are a good way to improve your post-flop skills? Yes, I do. I think Pio Solvers are great, and I think you should be getting used to how Pio thinks or how GTO thinks by running hands and scenarios through solvers. However, people make big mistakes by running random hands through solvers that aren't going to change their game. So the next part of this question is, I was thinking of starting a routine of studying 1 or 2 marked hands as a warm-up for and studying at the same time. So basically, should I be studying a few hands, marked hands a day? Now, when it comes to study habits and using Pio solvers, you're trying to understand the theoretical principles that apply to lots of spots. You're not trying to solve one spot perfect, so don't worry about calculating the ranges exactly. You're just trying to know how Pio thinks, and I think it's very important to get a good theoretical understanding of how Pio plays almost all spots, especially the most frequent spots, and then what that means for the ranges. So once you understand how Pio plays, so for example, say, the way I like to approach studying is by knowing what your weaknesses are. So say you've got 10 spots where you're weak or you feel like you don't understand theoretically that well. That's great. Now when you're playing a game, you start marking these hands down when they come up. The ones that come up the most frequently over the course of a few days, you then spend time studying. So say it could be my check back range on wet boards, I'm not sure on how to face a probe. Then you build up a lot of scenarios during games by paying attention, and then you put in a designated study hour, say the following day, where you get clarity on what your check back range should be and how you defend versus these probes. And then when you do a study session, you go into the study session with an objective. By doing these solutions, I will come out knowing this. And then you finish the session with an outcome. Now I know that GTO would do this, this, and this, and you then implement that into your game. So going into a study session, decide what you want to improve, what the objective is, then come with an outcome. So I used to write things like, Pio seems to, or GTO seems to like to do this with these hands. Pio likes to do these. And then it's almost like this hypothesis, because I would never write it in concrete. I go, it seems to like to do this. And then over time, I could test these assumptions. So you want to focus on spots which are more frequent, which come up all the time. So I think the danger with going through solvers is people get too wrapped up in making the solution perfect, and then they do loads of different hands just to get peace of mind on a spot they got cooler in, which doesn't theoretically matter to anything. So always try and see what Pio would do, and then try and understand the theoretical reason behind it. So yeah, you can see the hand it's using, but why? Does that make sense? Is that what you were doing? Would you expect it to look like that? And then over time you can test hypothesis by running more scenarios through that. So in terms of studying 1 or 2 marked hands a day, personally I prefer more of the approach of figuring out where you're weak, getting hands in these spots. So like say you've got three areas where you're very weak. Over time gather some hands. Once you've got 5 or 6 hands in this spot, spend a few hours going over them and really improving that part of your game. Once you finish the study session, write down what you're going to implement in your game, which is different. Understand how theoretically Pio plays that spot. And then the next level, once you've done that, you've got the Pio framework and you understand how Pio plays spots, then you can start to think, okay, in the real world, how do my opponents differ from that? And then what does that mean for my response? So that's where all the edges are, and that's where you make your money, when you understand the theoretical model, but how game dynamics are different and how you can exploit them. So to summarize that all, I'd say regular playing and regular studying, a combination of both. So make sure you're making time to study and to play. When you are studying, make sure you're doing it with an objective in mind. If you have an outcome, then that outcome, what you learn, goes into your game. If you're finishing studying sessions and it's not changing your game, or you're not theoretically learning stuff about a wide range of sports, you're wasting your time. And there's millions and millions of spots to go over, and you'll never go over them all. So don't try. Just try and get the ones that apply to the most spots and that are the most useful. So hope you guys found some use in that, and let me know in the comments below.